Welcome to Take Notice, Amplifying Black Stories. I am your host, Allison Preisinger-Heggins. We'll begin by taking notice of the voices that are so often unheard. Land acknowledgement statements are an important part of honoring those whose land we now live and work on. I have chosen to begin each episode this way to spark ideas and keep these conversations in the front of our minds so that we may learn how to do better. I would like to acknowledge the land on which I recorded this recording today and the recording of the interview in this episode. I would like to show gratitude to the traditional ancestral land of the Tulalip, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, Saxuatl, Shoalwater Bay, and Chinook tribes. Recognizing that these names are not the original names of the people of these areas, as I continue to learn how to better acknowledge Native people of these lands, I will adjust the wording of the beginning of each episode. I encourage listeners to research the land on which you live and are listening right now. Recognizing this is just the beginning. The mission of this project is to take notice, to listen, to hold space by amplifying Black stories, experiences, and voices. Conversation on family life, finding joy, and interests of folks in our country who encounter racism on a daily basis. A portion of these discussions will be dedicated to holding space for guests who are comfortable sharing their personal experiences with racism. Stories help us all learn and connect. We are here to listen, to take notice. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the last episode of 2020. Thank you for your support and for listening so far to Take Notice. We are just getting started, so be sure to subscribe and review and share with your friends. New episodes are coming every Tuesday in January, starting again on January 5th. It's really been a joy and an honor to start this project. I've already experienced such powerful connections with guests, many of whom I have not yet met in person, and so I'm looking forward to continuing this project and also eventually, hopefully, meeting these folks in person. My guest on this episode is one of those who I have not met yet in person, but I'm glad to have connected with for this project. Kibet is a global villager with Nandi, Kenyan, East African, and American influence. He's a curious soul, forever endeared by and applying himself to justice, which absolutely comes through in our conversation. He found out about this project through a mutual friend and was gracious with his stories, thoughts, and time. And we had some technical difficulties with our recording the first time around, so we ended up having to do an entirely new recording. So I was happy to have a second conversation with him, and he was kind enough to take the time to do it. So thank you, Kevin. There are still a few little bumps in the recording. Unfortunately, just with COVID and, not being able to record in person and navigating technology, it's happening. So hopefully that doesn't throw you off much as a listener. Thanks for bearing with us on that. Another quick note for this episode is later on in the conversation, I mentioned a book entitled The Servant, and I couldn't remember the author's name at the time. I also didn't really describe the concept that I was reminded of super clearly. So if you are interested in the book, it's really a book about leadership, but it really has applied, at least for me, it's one of those books that has come around a few times and is applied in many different situations and scenarios. So the full title and the author's name is The Servant, a simple story about the true essence of leadership, and it's by James C. Hunter. So again, thank you for joining me, Kevin, 2 times, and thank you all for listening. Please enjoy my conversation with Kevin Kibet. Take Notice invites you to follow, learn from, and support the ACLU. The ACLU dares to create a more perfect union beyond one person, party, or side. Their mission is to realize this promise of the United States Constitution for all and expand the reach of its guarantees. The ACLU today is the nation's largest public interest law firm with a 50-state network of staffed, autonomous affiliate offices. The ACLU is nonprofit and nonpartisan. They do not receive any government funding. Member dues and contributions and grants from private foundations and individuals pay for the work they do regarding issues including immigration, LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights, criminal justice, security and privacy, voting rights, capital punishment, disability rights, free speech, HIV, human rights, juvenile justice, national security, prisoners' rights, racial justice, religious liberty, smart justice, and women's rights. follow on social media, or visit aclu.org to learn about what's happening across the most pressing civil liberties issues of our time and what you can do. Well, welcome, Kevin, to Take Notice. Thanks for joining me. How are you today?
I'm okay. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to take part in the conversation. Very good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe we can start by hearing a bit about your background, where you grew up and who you were surrounded by.
Sure. So I'm originally from Kenya, which is a country in East Africa, right on the Indian Ocean. I grew up in a region called the Rift Valley, and of the Nandi people, the KO people, we kind of immigrated and settled on that from the Nile. We're part of the Nilots, the three people groups from Kenya. So there's majorly three people group, maybe four massive people groups. The Nilots, the Kushites, the Bantu, and a bit of the Arabs, Arab people who settled on the coast of Kenya. And so I'm part of the Nilots. So I kind of settled. I grew up in a small town called Eldoret. It's a town or city of 400,000 people.
And did you grow up with siblings and lots of family around, or just were you an only child?
Now, I have two siblings. I've got an elder sister and a younger sister. And for a few years of my life, the first 6 years of my life, I grew up in what you'd call a nuclear family. But even that, I think there were moments in my life where there were family members who were going to high school, so they came and stayed with us. And in two several batches that I remember, the cousins and uncles of mine who came and stayed with us. And then my parents separated when I was 6. And at that point, my mom went to a different city for work. And I went to boarding school. My elder sister and I went to boarding school. After that, we used to go to the farmhouse, my mom's side, my mom's parents. For a minute, we used to go to the farmhouse, but my grandparents were in the city doing businesses, but they used to come every other day, at least during holidays. That's in month of April, August, and from mid-November all the way to second week of January. That was holidays. Yeah, so it was just there was someone taking care of the farmhouse. There were people taking care of just cows and just running the farm, and they were just all responsible for us, and we were answerable to them. Yeah, but the grandparents came every day and hung out with us. Yeah, maybe twice. Maybe grandpa in the evening, grandma in the morning or during the day, and uncles and aunts. Yeah. Then we went back again. Then we moved back to the city again. Total city kid or urban kid, and and just lived in the urban city and made a life. And then finished high school, and then went to Nairobi for for college, and made a life in Nairobi. And
You said your parents divorced when you were 6.
yeah.
Did you see them equally after that, or were you with one more than the other?
No, mostly we stayed with my mom's side. From time to time, my dad would come and see us, maybe. Yeah, but we stayed mostly with my mom's side. But from time to time, also my mom's mom, my mom's side of grandmother, would tell us to go visit my dad's side of family. Because the way I grew up is whenever people come to ask for a hand of marriage, it's never just an individual. It was at least my culture. The culture that I grew up it was this: the individual comes and then they're told, like typically, at least the one I saw even with my friends, not just some of my tribe, but very many tribes, was your friends would bring you. At least it's male, mostly the male person doing it. The friend would bring the male person to the family and say, "Hey, we've got interest in this family," and then they would say, "Okay, go get your family." And then I would go back, the male person would go back and get the family. And then there would be an introduction of families and the conversation around what kind of people are you? And then there would be the village would kind of send off their daughter to this other family and get adopted to that family. So there was distinct, so it wasn't just these two individuals coming to form a unit. It was actually families and even to a sense clans, like a forming of people. Yeah, because even I remember in high school once I went making calls and I knocked on someone's door and I asked for water and they were like they gave me milk. But then also subsequent conversations was, who are you from? Who are you of? So you typically say, oh, I am son of so and so, So they'll ask you, where do you come? So people typically will say which region. Then someone will try and narrow it down to like, oh, son, sometimes even clan or something. Yeah. So in essence, basically, I'm just trying to say it wasn't like an individual. There was this sense, at least I saw it or I interpreted it to be that this sense of communal way of being, that you're not just alone and you're cognizant of your impact because it's not just you, eh? A whole group of you take you. So it's almost like people put their word for you. Yeah.
Mm, right.
Accountability of sorts, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
So when your parents separated, then it was more than just the two of them separating. It was kind of
yeah,
the both sides,
yeah,
intermingled, but then kind of navigating that afterwards. Yeah.
for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Because even I
Yeah.
remember like my dad coming once, at least they came and talked. There was some conversation of sorts, but then the way I interpreted it, probably it's just my projection of this. People sat down and decided, man, it's good for this to, and it happened several times. So it was good for you people to live separately, and the kids will be taken care of. Basically, an essence of almost like the kids are not just yours; the kids that belong to all of us, and
Mm-hmm.
we're all responsible for them. And so this in seeing the individual, you're seeing in the individual in the bigger context and not just the individual and stuff. And in totally seeing you, there's this question of what's the best thing for the people involved and not just the individuals.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So different from the American approach to divorce and separation and things. It does seem very isolating for people,
Totally, yeah.
which maybe it's still isolating in your culture as well. But yeah, it just seems very different. Yeah.
Yeah. I would wager maybe less so isolating because then you're not just alone. There's even maybe a bit less shame, and probably I've not done any academic as research around it, but I would think like since it's a community all like come together and agree, oh, this is it's agreed, and then it's just bees. Yeah,
Mm, right.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe more communication around it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Or probably not even maybe, definitely more communication around it. Sounds like. Oh, yeah, that seems like if things happen in life, and that seems like a really forward approach, like a positive approach to something that's probably hard, no matter how you approach it. So, um,
Yeah, yeah. And you see now it's a very interesting thing now I think about it, because then there's this westernization and that is has bled all over, and this quote unquote superiority complex of the Western way of doing things. Because
mhm,
it's not like, for example, it's not like African societies did not have systems of government. There were systems of government that helped, and they innovated to respond to the need and the way of being. And so then in there's this conflict with the superiority complex that is embedded on other people. Then we miss the value of what was there. And I'm not saying that whatever systems were there were perfect, but there was some wealth, there's some evolution that helped, that context specific evolution and innovation to best suit the people that were. So right now, the expectation, the shroudedness around shame, of and this expectation of the nuclear family and shame around it, yeah, it kind of tears the fabric of society apart more, vis-a-vis the more essence of let's talk, let's see if it's irreconcilable differences. Then the community decides we will support you in this journey, and we honor this fact that probably the two of you, at least in this season of your lives, you live separate lives in a sense.
mhm. What did your parents do when you were younger?
My mom worked for the telecom industry, and my dad was a driver. Yeah, and driver and a farmer maybe. Yeah, but mostly a driver. But then also alcoholism came in place, and he had issues, struggled with alcoholism for quite a while.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
A driver, how do you mean a driver? What kind of driver?
truck driver.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there was portions of times where, yeah, like you would truck driving for cereal and stuff like that. Yeah, for
Okay.
companies. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So what ended up taking you out to the United States from Kenya? Or was it, now forgive me, is Nairobi in Kenya or
Yes, it is. It is.
okay.
Nairobi is the capital city of Kenya, so it's somewhere in the centrals. Yeah, yeah. After 6 years of work, I did work. My first piece of work was to, or at least career, was to try and increase access to the internet. I argue that access to the internet is almost like a human right, because
Mm,
then, as a basic human right, because then that gives you information on, for example, what's the price of produce, what's available in the market.
mhm.
Yeah, so I argued and I thought if I could apply myself to increase access to that, would have been nice. So I did that for 5, 6 years, and then I got to a point where I was at a precipice or a juncture, a crossroad, and I was wondering what's next. And I thought something to do with waste, or something to do with water, or something to do with energy would be the challenge of our day. And I did some research, a bit of research, and a friend of mine, a journalist friend of mine, challenged me and asked, because it was a technological company, asked, "What were you doing to make energy, sustainable energy?" So I did my research, and that piqued my interest. And so, moving to the States, I moved to pursue a graduate study in renewable and clean energy. And so I was fortunate to move to Dayton, Ohio,
Mm.
for a renewable master's in renewable and clean energy. And I was also, I must say, I was then married to someone who was from Minneapolis, so that made it easier.
Oh, sure. Right.
Yeah.
Is it that when you marry someone from the States, do you automatically gain citizenship or do you have to still, I imagine you still have to do some, paperwork and all that stuff, but it must work differently.
There is a process.
Hmm.
There is a process, but it's an option you can take.
Mm-hmm. So then you were in Dayton, Ohio, and then what took you to the Seattle area?
So, Dayton, Ohio, for grad school, I moved to Lansing, Michigan, for
Mm-hmm.
work. And then, but I always wanted to move to the Seattle area. And after 1.5 years doing energy efficiency in Lansing, there was an opportunity to work on wind and solar from the Seattle office, and I was fortunate enough to get a position out here. So, yeah, we moved about 6, 7 years ago now.
Okay. Do you have any comparisons of the areas in the states that you've lived from Ohio to Lansing to Seattle as far as,
Um,
your, the culture or just your experience in general?
Yeah, there's an actual bumper sticker said Dayton's all right if you've never been anywhere else. But Dayton was all right. I mean, it was a small city. It was a city surrounded by suburbs, the motor city. Then it's got a history, a legacy in innovation. So,
Hmm.
like the NCR was there, National Cash Register Corporation or something like that, was invented. The Wright brothers were from there. So there's quite a bit of innovation that came from Dayton.
Hmm.
And so also the auto industry was there. At least a plant was there, and there's even a show on Netflix, I think, on the last truck or something was from Dayton, Ohio. And
Mm.
then Lansing, Michigan, because East Lansing was just right there, and so MSU was there. In my humble opinion, I think Lansing, when people saw you were different, they ascribed you to college and figured you had your own community over there, and
Mm.
you're not necessarily, not out of ill, but it was just probably an assumption that you already had a community and you're transient anyway. Yeah, so Lansing
Mm.
was a bit tough. Seattle was supposed to be this progressive city, at least from the outside. Progressive city. I was eager to come and join and be part of pushing the envelope and pushing the conversations and try and figure solutions. Yes, I'm still doing. I'm still waiting for that. Anyway, yeah.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
guess I had high lofty dreams for Seattle, but yeah, I'm glad to
Yeah.
be taking part in it. So.
Mhm. Yeah, you're definitely not the only one. Even from me, I didn't grow up in Seattle, but I grew up
Yeah.
north of Seattle. And even I had that misconception of Seattle. Only recently have I learned the whole, yeah, I mean, not the whole, but a lot about the background of inequality in Seattle and all these things that nobody ever talked about when I was younger. And so you just assume that Seattle's a progressive city and, doing all these cool things. And so, there's no issues, when you're younger, you don't, and for myself, I'm not a person of color, so you don't see it, so, so it's, yeah, it definitely, I don't know what it is about Seattle that there's this like veil over it that's like, here's what this is, but it's really, really not. So even as someone that grew up very close to the city, that illusion was there. So
at least that ascription, I hope it's a dream that we can call ourselves to try and make a more inclusive, equitable city, a city that works for everyone. And if I can borrow a friend's phrase, that people might actually cede power to seed. So seed to secede power, like relinquish to plant to seed. Yeah, I hope that the people, as either transients or new guests or people who grew up here, can be more of an invitation to what does Seattle want to be? How can we dream of Seattle being a more inclusive, vibrant with the arts and stuff like that? And we can all apply ourselves. And even better still, can we say, what does it mean to be human in Seattle? And then ensuring that everyone gets that quality of life as a human. Because one of the things that and still grips my heart up to today, I couldn't believe how much the amount of homelessness, and that was just 2014, when I moved to the city, and I was really perturbed with all the prosperity in the city and homelessness being like almost as an accepted thing and almost nothing being done to it. My office was in 4th and Pike. At Third and Pike, and I used to like coming out of it. So you had a choice of entrances. There was one on 4th and there's one on 3rd. If you come out on 4th, it's a different world. If you come up on 3rd, it's a different world completely.
Oh yeah, isn't that crazy? Just a block away.
Just one block, and it was very interesting that sometimes we want to just go through 4th, but for me it used to be interesting that maybe it's just craziness, but anyway, I used to like coming out of 3rd to remind myself that my reality is not everyone's. So there are people who are struggling, and the solution, we need to apply ourselves towards a solution to ensure that everyone at least get a decorum for what it means to be human. Just because of their humanness, some dignity of what does it mean to have good health care, to have a roof over your head, to have security to meals, to feel safe.
Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do. And what's the word I'm looking for? Empathetic isn't the right word, but to have empathy and an awareness of what is reality for our city and for our country, to walk out on 3rd or to go that different route and see, look at it, and be aware of it instead of try to just avoid it and ignore it. Yeah.
I wonder if it is, true. I've always wondered, like, why am I drawn to that? Or not really, why am I drawn to it? Or what does it bug me so much? And I have a theory around that. I can see myself in those people. Not even, I can see my loved ones, like I can look and like, or rather I'm curious to see what's the story behind. And not in an accusatory way, not in a voyeuristic way, but to witness their person and so that to try in giving them, or at least in being part of that solution. It's not just this a top down, but almost a bottom of the pyramid going up, where you meet the person where they are at and you figure out what ideas about their solution would be, and then you work towards that and build it up. Or do we sometimes choose to deny ourselves of our humanity? Or even actually, I had a conversation around, are we busy chasing the ladder that we all just want to ascribe to this ladder that we're going, that we forget our own humanity?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have, and maybe not we all, but at least our society, our culture has this like, here's your route, here's where you need to go, and then the people that fall off of that for this reason or that reason, it's like, well, you didn't get there, so is the feeling, though. There's many people who are trying to make it improve upon it, but it's There's,
Yeah.
again, many layers to why third is the way it is, or,
Yeah.
as a small
Yeah.
example. But
It's interesting in this time, it sends me thinking in this time, and especially since I take part in design quite a bit, in this season, and it's true that the system is not broken, it's just working the way it is. It was designed,
right,
and it's
right.
working for whoever it's supposed to work for, and it's not working for the others. And now it's a question of like, wait, how can we design? How can we uproot this system and replace it with something better, something hopefully that will work for more people, more of us. I wonder how that would look.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the requirement of more people, I think, seeing that the system just needs to be set aside and rebuilt, into something better for more people.
Yeah.
Just curious if you have any thoughts on your experience as a person of color, either in the States compared to being at home, or in Seattle compared to maybe when you were living in Lansing or Dayton.
In Lansing, in Michigan, generally, I guess and so like one curiosity I've always being a guest in this country or a citizen or choosing to be a citizen in this country. It was just like looking at this country for who this country is, and not just the true picture of who this country is. And it was so sad driving around in different places. And I was fortunate in the sense that in the first 3.5 years in living in Seattle, I used to travel a week of every month, and I traveled to small town America. So I got quite a bit from Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, California. I got a breadth of places I've visited, and it's sometimes very sad seeing how where segregation is happening today, where neighborhoods are all segregated, and it's all either divided by a bridge, a road, and you're like, the reality on the left side and the reality on the right side is not the same. And the funniest thing is, with a little bit of investment on where people of color live, it would be beautiful spaces. It'd be vibrant spaces. And then to look at people of color, and you look at what they are able to do with whatever resources they have, and you're just like, the resilience that you see floors you, because you're like, wow, like the system has actually been designed to discredit you, to put you out. But no, the places where the fun places to be, the places where there is life, that is where there is, and not necessarily sterilization of uniformity and conformity, but there is an appreciation of the full spectrum of it. And it's, you look at that and you're like, whoa. And so there's this, and you're like, you wonder, like, what are we missing by being very sterile and pushing people away? Personally, like, right from you're flying into this country, a pesticide or an insecticide, cartridges of stuff is blown in the airplane. As you come into this country, you're like, whoa, okay, okay. And then,
Oh, right. Yeah. And that's because you're coming to the country from Kenya, is that right?
from Africa, from motherland, yeah. Then it moves. You're at workplaces, and you're in a meeting. You're actually leading the meeting, and when someone else is talking, people are paying attention. And then when you're talking, someone is busy on their phone, and you're like, or someone who is in your team, and you're like, you're the one who's, where you're calling the shots on this one, and someone says, no, I've got to talk to this other white person to tell you what's going to happen. You're like,
right.
What?
Hold on here. Right.
Exactly. Then
right.
you even explain again, and you're like, yo, I am actually the one who determines what's going to work. And not to make matters worse, I actually understand the industry where you are because I used to do it, and they still don't get it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes it potentially an everyday struggle to just fight for being able to do your job, or it sounds like it'd be pretty exhausting.
And even some other things, you're just like, okay, it's
I'm sure. Yeah, countless examples. I bet. Did you have any specific story around that you would like to share?
Nothing really there else would be very, very controversial. It's just, it goes between the
Mm,
systems and how we've chosen to set up family. And it's like
mm-hmm.
the system is so set up for this monolithic nuclear whatever, vis-a-vis there is a different way of being where, anyway, yeah, it's just, there's a
Sure.
different way of being where people can be set up communally and you can spread the load and figure it out. So in a sense, yeah, but it's different. I mean, it's different way of organizing. It's again, systems again are not necessarily set up, and then you wonder. This then triggers on like you wonder if we organized ourselves around the least of us, then we would design a more inclusive system.
Mm,
Then people would have more. I think would have a better life to lead. People would lead more fulfilling lives because then there would be this spaciousness and this whole tapestry of beauty of different way of doing things, and not
mm-hmm.
necessarily just expecting conformancy and having this one prescription on things.
Right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Kind of
yeah,
flipping that pyramid,
yes,
like you were saying.
yeah,
It reminds me of this book that I read a while back when I coached cross country for a
yeah.
while, a bunch of
Oh wow.
runners.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the other coaches, suggested that I read this book. It's called The Servant, and I can't think of who it's by right now.
Mm,
But one of the main things that I grabbed from that book was, it has this example of a business, where, you've got the top, the CEO or whoever, and then the customers are at the bottom.
yep,
But really, if you flip that upside down and you're serving the customers first, like what
yep,
do they need?
yep,
And then from that is your employees and things like what do your employees need to be able to serve those customers and from you and things like that. So as an example or an analogy of, if we, what you were just saying of kind of flipping what we're
yeah,
already doing
yeah,
and thinking of the people who have the least right now and who need the
indeed,
most,
indeed,
it would change so much.
yeah. And the funniest thing is, it wouldn't take from us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it,
There's probably a misperception that it would, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It would
right.
actually make it easier for people who have power. It would actually make it better for them.
Hmm.
It make it better for us, for everyone. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah. Well, one of my questions that I ask everybody is what brings joy or fun into your life?
huh, yeah. This people connection, like just randomly connecting with people and forming community and just seeing each other. I'm generally a curious
Mm.
person, so hearing people's stories and just taking learnings with me. I It's interesting you mentioned cross country. I'm an out of shape runner, so when I can get out there, do some trail running. Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I co-parent two humans, so partly they bring me a joy. All joy, no fun. A book to say that, yeah, it's work raising them, but it's fun. It's
Sure.
immense joy.
Hmm.
Yeah, and connecting with people. Yeah, say that again. Yeah, but majorly. Oh, and good food. Good food does goes a long
Ah,
way. Good food goes a long way.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it does. How old are your kids?
I got a 8-year-old and soon to be 10. No, 6. I'm doing poor.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
8 and 6. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Wonderful. Trail running. Oh man, if I had a good trail by me, I would run way more.
What distances would you enjoy?
I would never okay,
Or
so
is this time?
I did one half marathon, but other than
Okay.
that, it was all 5K,
Yeah.
and then I did track. I did 800 in the mile.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah.
Cool. Cool.
How about you?
Oh, I enjoyed I enjoyed distance. I think the half is my favorite race. If I was to race, but
Oh,
I've done
okay.
several marathons, and yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
There is a good race in Kenya running at Nature Conservancy, and so you're
Mm,
running, and yeah, there's all kinds of nature and
mm.
elephants, and like it's just really good, and it's really nice. Lewa Marathon is really good.
Oh my goodness, that
Yeah,
sounds amazing.
yeah,
I would love to do that.
yeah. Yeah.
I think I would forget about how I felt in those surroundings and just run forever.
Yeah.
Just
Just
looking around.
enjoy it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason I could never get my brain to think about a marathon. So
Mm.
mid distance, I think, for me. But
That's
yeah.
cool. Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
right now I've gotten to a point where it's just the joy of running. So I get
Yeah.
on it
Yeah.
and just run until my body feels good, or I feel
Mm-hmm.
now it's just for the joy of running.
Sure. Yeah. No pressure, no necessarily any goals. Yeah. Feels nice that way. Yeah. My next question is, what would make you feel genuinely equal?
That's a tough question.
It's a big one. Yeah.
Yes. I guess when I see more movement towards centering Black and Indigenous folk, like seriously and seriously considering and drawing from Black folk and asking what works and doing policies, setting up policies that works for people. And I am not even, yeah, it'll be nice to see it in the legislature, but in every person, um, because people, we all have power in us, in a sense, however small, we all have power. For example, people who set up policies around businesses and stuff, we all set up, we around, we think about business models and all, that we can set up things that will drastically shift how we do things, how we define success in school, to be more inclusive. How do we make right wrongs, like why is it that in the crack pandemic it was illegal and now it is a medical emergency, and in seeing that, probably we can all agree that that was short-sighted of us. And then how does recompense come back to people who we took their lives just for having weed in their pocket and we sent them to jail?
Mm.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
then if we can do those things to start to truly start looking at ourselves as a society and as Americans, saying the ills that there are great things we've done, but also there's quite a bit of ills we've done, and without looking into that, because then that will allow us to start cascading and going even to be like, wow, how are we doing neocolonialism today in the world? And let alone that, people, we might want to absorb ourselves from it, but no, how you feel in the military complex, they're going through the world in our name, doing things in our name. We are party of that. Yeah. How can we be
Mm-hmm.
different from our forefathers and ensure that we do different things? Yeah. That's why partly I hope, like Seattle, we can raise to the occasion and truly do showcase what can it look like to center on a marginalized group, and actually truly do and put investments. And because we've chosen to be a capitalistic system, then our values is our money, right? So let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's invest in bringing up the marginalized and correcting those wrongs. That
Yeah.
would feel centered. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me. Before I say goodbye, are there any specific businesses, organizations, artists, anyone you want to highlight before we're all done?
Organizations. There is Community Passageways, who are doing a really great job in looking at how does a different system to, because when people wrong each other in a society, we need to have ways so that the person who was wronged can say, this is how you wronged me, and the person who wronged the other can be able to see and can take ownership of what they did and show and take actions as a society. We holding them in place for them to make corrective actions, and actions that will show that they're remorse, or at least trying to be in right standing with one another. So
Mm-hmm.
Community Passageways has attempted to do that and is doing that work, and I applaud them. I want to applaud different voices that are bringing up issues that issues and education because of like many things that people do not know. Many people have taken up and used platforms to do that. I upload because that is a conversation has kind of increased wealth of subjects to talk to, and I upload people who shared whatever is close to their heart using different platforms. There's something to be said about crowdsourcing knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah,
And that the
definitely.
few people who are gatekeepers, or at least the few of us who find ourselves in spaces where we are holding stuff that we just know that we're just holding in trust, but we're not the voice that we can point back the camera, the mic to the many, because there is a lot of wisdom and wealth from the many.
Yeah, that's very true. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for joining me. I really appreciate your time and sharing your thoughts, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much, Kevin.
You're welcome, Allison.
Thank you for joining us for Take Notice, Amplifying Black Stories. Please subscribe and follow us on social media. We are at Take Notice Podcast. It would really help us out if you could take a couple of minutes to review our podcast. Thank you for your support. Take Notice, Amplifying Black Stories is produced, hosted, and edited by Allison Preisinger-Heggins, co-produced by Amanda Ray. Music by Version Big 5 featuring Darius Heggins. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking notice.